a lot of acid, it's eroded and it will never heal. So that is the method, the mode of action of the PPIs. We can also look at it. It's the same thing, but now this, the same thing we have talked about. So you can see we are starting with a benzimidazole. You can see, but this one has started from this not being protonated and that one being protonated. But remember, I told you where we started. So it has started, this was protonated first, and then that is protonated, as we have said. But then in the equilibrium, we do have the non-protonated pyridine, and it attacks, as we have said, that carbon 2. And why we have said this is electron withdrawing, and even the nitrogen here, which is protonated, that nitrogen here, which is protonated, also is an electron withdrawer, because the nitrogen is deficient of electrons, and therefore this is a highly electrophilic carbon. Nitrogen attacks the 2' carbon. That's a 2' carbon in the presence of hydrogen, in the presence of the acid. Definitely, again, that is what we are calling we do have an equilibrium there. So that comes in and attacks, and this is a spiroketal. You can see that carbon, which is joined the two cyclic rings to give us a spiro intermediate. So that's our spiro intermediate. And then the next now is, as we said, this hydrogen or this bond comes in there. And once it comes in there, it allows us for the split of that bond to give us the sulfenic acid. And then the final one, we said, this attacks there, and that forms water. You lose water molecule to give us the sulfenamide. And then the sulfenamide, you have the ATPase enzyme, which has a sulfhydro group, SH group. The sulfur has lone pair of electrons. The sulfur attacks there. And once it attacks there, the lone pair of electrons here will go to the hydrogen, and you have the SS ATPase. So that will give us, this means the lone pair, so you will lose a proton in the process. And then you have now, you can see what we have there, our original sulfur. So it's, the structure now is different down here, because of course the nitrogen has now directly attached. The nitrogen is directly attached to our imidazole ring. This was our imidazole ring. So the nitrogen is directly attached. The nitrogen of the pyridine ring is now attached to the benzimidazole ring, which was not the case when we started. That was not the case. Then, of course, this group was still there. This group was still there, but of course, this group was continuous. If you look, remember our original structure. Remember our original structure, you can see the pyridyl nitrogen was free. Now this time it is the one which is attached directly to the benzimidazole, and then the sulfur, the sulfoxide, which was attached to the benzimidazole cleaves, and that sulfoxide is now attached to an ATPase enzyme. And that is the disulfide adduct. That is the adduct that we require. It adds, it's an addition of the drug, activated drug, plus the ATPase enzyme, and therefore non-availability of ATPase enzyme. And that non-availability of ATPase enzyme allows for healing of the ulcer, as I have already explained. Is there any question up to there before I move on? Any question? Are we okay? We move on? All right. So I decided, let me go to that, so that now as we continue now explaining, I believe whatever I mention now, you will find it, you will be able to understand, because I've already explained. Disappearing, but nevertheless. So we have done that. We have also done that slide. We've looked at that slide. That we have discussed, and that's why I went now so that we could understand the mechanism of action. So this is where we were. So this now I hope is very, very clear. Electron donating substituents that we have discussed will add electrons into the system and therefore promote ionization. However, and more importantly, this electronic enrichment will also increase the nucleophilic character. So when you enrich, when you enrich it, it is more protonated, there is trapping. That will also increase the nucleophilic character of any PPI pyridine nitrogen atoms in the ionized conjugate base form. For this reason, electron donating substituents of the pyridine ring enhance the rate of formation of the active sulfonic acid or sulfonamide rearrangement products. I hope it's clear. We are only saying you have made the nitrogen more nucleophilic. It will attack more readily, and therefore the rate of formation of the sulfonic acid or the sulfonamide, which you do require that, so that is what reacts with the ATPase enzyme. So that I hope is clear. Electron withdrawing substituents would of course have the opposite effect. The pKa value of the benzimidazole, that's the N3, that's the pi nitrogen, that's the pKa2 is much lower than that of the pyridine, nitrogen, and ranges from 0.11 for pantoprazole to 0.79 for meprazole and esomeprazole. Of course, as we say, the lower the pKa, the higher the Ka. So when this nitrogen has a much lower pKa, it means it's lesser basic than the pyridine nitrogen. And the lower the pKa, the lower this pKa is, like for pantoprazole, the lesser the nucleophilic, the lower the nucleophilicity of the benzimidazole nitrogen, and of course the lower, therefore that can have some effect on the reactivity of that drug. These lower pKa values mean that the benzimidazole ring protonates after the pyridine ring, and the extent of protonation will be significantly lower. The extent it protonates later, and the extent of protonation will be much lower because of the lower pKa. I think that is self-explanatory. The higher the pKa value, pKa2 value, the more willingly the benzimidazole nitrogen accepts protons and becomes cationic. Again, the same, it's a fact, because the pKa controls the Ka and even the Kb. And as we are saying, the higher it is, the lower the Ka. The lower the Ka, the higher the basicity. That is just in direct proportion. A cationic benzimidazole N3 is found in see, this is what I was saying. Is you see, like you have benzimidazole protonated, pyridine protonated, and then it is in equilibrium with benzimidazole protonated, pyridine non-protonated. A cationic benzimidazole N3 is found in both of them are protonated, is critical to the activation of the PPI, since it will pull electrons through sigma bonds from the adjacent benzimidazole carbon 2, rendering it highly electron deficient. All we are saying is what I had already mentioned, and we had said it somewhere. All we are saying is that we also require, if you look at this, when you look at the mode of action, we are saying when this is protonated, nitrogen does not like not having electrons. So when it is protonated, it means its lone pair of electron has been utilized. When it is protonated, it will pull electrons from whatever is available, and one of the carbons that is available is this one. So when this is protonated, and it will be more readily protonated when you have a high pKa. When it is protonated, then it will pull electrons from this carbon and remember, this is pulling electrons. Now when this is protonated, it is also pulling electrons even much more. Even when it is not protonated, it's pulling, but when it is protonated, its pull of electron is even much higher, giving this a much stronger or a much higher positive, delta positive charge. The higher the positivity of this carbon, the more rapid or the easier or more readily will the nitrogen attack that. This is electron density. As electron density, that has electron deficiency. The more this has electron density, and the less this has electron density, the better the reactivity. And that's all we are saying. So when this allows for protonation also, then it allows for the rate, it improves on the rate and the potency of these drugs. That's what I wanted just to go back there so that you understand what we are saying. So you're saying that one we had done. Yes, a cationic benzimidazole will help. We'll read the adjacent benzimidazole carbon 2 prime. Remember, you read to make it more electron deficient, or to make it more electrophilic, rendering it highly electron deficient and therefore more reactivity. The benzimidazole carbon 2 prime will be attacked by the anionized pyridine nitrogen, and the more electrophilic data positive it is, the faster the attack will be. I think I've explained that. Since the intramolecular nucleophilic attack generates the active form of the PPIs, proton pump will be inactivated. So the pKa2 and also pKa1, we have said, of course, pKa1 is higher, but we also need a relatively high pKa2 to allow for formation of the electrophilic carbon 2 prime, which will allow, electrophilic carbon 2 prime, and the formation of the electrophilic carbon 2 prime is because of the fact that the nitrogen is protonated. Since this intramolecular nucleophilic attack, that's what we have said, electron donating substituent on carbon 5 prime position of the benzimidazole ring, you push electrons to the N3. So that's another one. So we are looking at two characteristics which look like they are opposing each other, but they are not. So we are saying here we require this nitrogen to have a relatively, not a very high, a relatively high pKa to allow for protonation. When it is protonated, it pulls electrons from there. But now, when you have this substituent here, we would require this substituent to also be an electron donor rather than electron puller. We want it to be an electron donor so that it can donate electrons through resonance and increase the basicity of this nitrogen. In increasing the basicity of this nitrogen, it will allow for faster protonation. Please understand, they are really not contradictory, because we are saying if this nitrogen is having the effect of an electron donor here, it will have much higher basicity, more readily protonated. Once it's protonated, it now pulls the electrons away. So that's what we are saying. So at position number 5 or at position number 5 prime of this drug, we expect that we have an electron donor. If you have an electron donor, it adds on to the basicity of nitrogen 3. If you have an electron withdrawer, it reduces on the basicity of nitrogen 3 and therefore decreases the rate at which the nitrogen is protonated, reducing the rate of formation of the activated moiety, the sulfenic acid or the sulfenamide. So please understand those two different effects of the groups that we are looking at. We are looking at two different groups. We are looking at the substitution. We are looking at the substitution on the benzimidazole ring, and we are saying that substitution will have an influence on the pKa of the benzimidazole nitrogen. When you have electron donors, then it will increase the pKa of the benzimidazole nitrogen, allowing it to be readily protonated, allowing it on protonation to pull electrons and therefore fasten or enhance the rate of reaction of these PPIs. I hope that is clear also. That one we have already looked at because of going back. That one we have looked at. Electron donating substituents on the benzimidazole ring, and I think we have looked at that. The electron donating on the benzimidazole ring and answer it. Yes. Once the benzimidazole is protonated, an equilibrium is established between that. This I had already explained. So there will be an equilibrium between that is protonated and that is protonated. It will be in equilibrium with either of them. When this is protonated, the other one not protonated. Plus, when the first one is not protonated and the second one is protonated, that's just the equilibrium. So it will be in equilibrium. This is a dication in equilibrium with two of the monocations, where only one of the groups or the heterocyclic rings within the drug is protonated. Only the benzimidazole protonated pyridine monocation, which has the anonymized pyridine nitrogen, is capable of conducting the intramolecular nucleophilic attack of carbon 2' to produce the active sulfonamide and sulfonic acid products. Again, this is a repetition of whatever I've already explained. I said when you have this, it will be in equilibrium with that one and that one. This might be in low concentrations, but there will be that one and that one. It is this one that we require, because we require the highly nucleophilic pyridine, which is non-protonated, to attack the electrophilic carbon 2'. So please understand, this is something I've already explained, and this again we have already explained. Once the intramolecular nucleophilic attack occurs and the active sulfonamide sulfonic acid species are generated, the acid-base equilibrium will shift to provide additional anionized pyridine monocation molecules. That is what happens in all equilibriums. Once you remove one moiety, you shift the equilibrium, because the equilibrium constant is a constant. And for that equilibrium constant to be a constant, it means removal of any moiety within the equilibrium will force, that is the Chakrias principle, will force the equilibrium to shift so that you maintain the constant K equilibrium constant. If you do not do that, then you will change your equilibrium constant. Because remember, the equilibrium constant is the concentration of what is on the right divided by the concentration of what is on the left. So if you change any concentration of any of those moieties, then you change the equilibrium constant. So you are forced, if you remove one, you are forced to allow for more dissociation to increase whatever you have removed. And that's all you're saying. Eventually, or most of the PPA molecules will be activated, and they will form the disulfide bonds with the vulnerable proton pump cysteine. This is the cysteine residues. Remember, the cysteine residues are the ones which have the sulfhydro groups. So we are saying the proton pump has also cysteine residues. They do have the sulfhydro group, the SH groups, and those SH groups are the ones that will bind the sulfonamide or sulfonic acid, and therefore form the adduct, which indeed holds the enzyme, and therefore not allowing it to be available to catalyze the release or the secretion of the hydrogen ions. So all this we have said, it attacks, it gives us a spirox. This is the same thing, this is all we have done. So even if I don't go back to it, this is what I had discussed. And we have actually discussed all this, whereby we have said the pyridyl attacks the carbon 2', and attacking the carbon 2' to give us the spiroketal, and then loses, then we mentioned that hydrogen moves, and then loss of a water molecule, and so on, until you get the sulfonide, sulfonic and sulfonide, which now attacks the final group, which is the sulfhydro groups within the proton pump enzyme. All this is just an explanation of the mechanism, which we have already. Once you draw it, when you draw it, you really don't have to explain it in words, because once you draw it, you show how the electrons move and up to the end. So that's all. That is just explaining the same, which I had explained already when we looked at the mechanism of action. Is there any question up to there? I see no question. So I hope you have understood how the proton pump inhibitors are activated, because they require to be activated within the canaliculars, where first of all they are protonated at the benzimidazole, at the pyridine pyridine nitrogen. Of course, the pyridine having higher pKa will be protonated first, and then the other one is protonated. And of course, once the two are protonated, because these are weak acids and these are weak bases, then there will be an equilibrium formed, and it's a non-ionized pyridyl which triggers the activation of the PPIs. I hope that is clear. So from there, let us look at the formulation. And finally, usually you find that you're saying that the PPIs are usually formulated as enteric-coated. that is delayed release tablets or capsules. So almost all, although the action of the PPIs is in the gastric parietal cells, all PPI products marketed as enteric-coated delayed release tablets or capsules. Why would you want to formulate them as delayed action? Why do you formulate them as delayed action? And what do you mean? Can you explain to me now? Teach me the pharmacokinetic. We used to call it pharmaceutics. Teach me the pharmaceutics. What do we mean? What do we mean by enteric-coated? When we say a tablet or a drug is enteric-coated, what do we mean by enteric-coated? Can I get answers? And as you say, tell me why enteric-coated. Why is it necessary for these drugs to be enteric-coated? Can I get an answer quickly, please? Why? I have said, what is enteric-coated? Why? That was the first question. Always answer questions. I ask the first question, what is enteric-coated? And I can see I have quite a number of answers, but these are not enough. I have how many students today? I have 30 students. Out of 30 students, why should I have only 5 answers? Hiyo ni mbaya. I'm supposed to have more answers. I have 30 students. I'm supposed to be having 30 answers. These are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 answers. I need more. I need more answers. Anyway, thank you, Tonui. Enteric-coated to prevent the drug from acidic media. Why? I told you, learn to answer questions completely. Don't assume I know in anything. Why are you trying to avoid? Number one, what is enteric-coated? There's no answer. You see, like if you answer a question like this, as I said, you see now, you will not get full marks. You can get, the question might have 5. You get 2. You will be saying I answered well. Daktari aliangusha mimi. But I didn't kuangusha wewe. Sababu, you see, like now here, I do not know what the first question was, what is enteric-coated? Number 2, why enteric-coated? So enteric-coated to prevent the drug from acidic media. Why? Why? Why would you prevent? Is it because the drug undergoes degradation? Does it decompose, or does it undergo deactivation in acidic media? Why? You need to answer the question appropriately, because the acidic media can do different things. Enteric-coated to prevent degradation by gastric acid. Sharon Mubua, thank you. You have tried, but again, think it out again. Think it out again. That might not be the correct answer, but thank you for trying. Then Frida, formulated as enteric-coated to prevent degradation. Again, thank you for trying, but it's not the right answer. Then Lucika Daisy, enteric-coated tablets, a tablet formulated to avoid fast-pass effect, prevent gastric acidity from metabolizing the drug. Is it just, do you want enteric-coated to prevent metabolism? Or what is the whole reason for enteric? When you say enteric-coated, what do you mean? No, you can't say enteric-coated to prevent metabolism. No, that's not an explanation. What is enteric-coating? That's what I want. I want what is enteric-coating? It could help in this, but what is enteric-coating? Then the other one, enteric-coating to prevent acidic degradation, enteric-coating to prevent drug degradation, prevent acid hydrolysis, coated tablets formulated to bypass acidic condition in the stomach. Demo, Patricia, why? Why are you bypassing to bypass acidic conditions? Why? Now this one is an answer for a wise student who is not very sure. They're not very sure why. So they tell you to bypass, which I already know. The enteric-coated they will bypass, but why? I think due to the presence of the imidazole and pyridine moiety, it is enteric-coated to prevent premature activation of the drug before reaching the definitive site of action by protonation, which further inhibits its absorption. Good. Omenya will watch. That's a good answer. But you did not tell me what enteric-coated is. PPIs are protonated easily. It's enteric-coated to prevent inactivation. inactivation before absorption. These are little bit here. Let's put the answer a bit. Because not only are you preventing inactivation before, but why are you enteric coating? Why don't you want that? Why don't you want that activation? Of course, once you protonate in the stomach, for sure absorption will be a problem. But that is not the reason. The reason is what Omeni watch is telling us. You see, as I said, and I stressed that these drugs, the enzyme, the receptor, what is the location of the receptor? The location of the receptor is inside or within the canaliculus of the parietal cells. So for these drugs to be able to bring about their effect, they require their activation very near their receptor. They require their activation very near their receptor. So that is why you will enteric coat them, not to prevent them from undergoing degradation. When you do enteric coating, you facilitate or you allow the drug not to be released. When you enteric coat, the drug is not released in the stomach. The drug is released upper belly, upper duodenum. I believe that's a pharmaceutics I did those many years. I know an enteric coated medicine is not released within the stomach, but that's the acidic media. It will go down, and at the beginning where you start changing your pH from acidic pH to alkaline pH. That is where the drug is released. So you see, this drug will be released. It's enteric coated. It passes through the stomach without the drug being released into the environment. And the drug, when it gets within the duodenum, where you now have slight alkaline pH, it is released within the alkaline pH. Within the alkaline pH, that drug cannot be activated. Within the alkaline pH, that drug is highly lipophilic. So very readily, it pushes, remember, passes into the blood. And there in the blood, as the blood circulates throughout the body, remember, the blood will get into the canaliculi, the drug passes out into the canaliculi or into the parietal cell. Within the parietal cell, pop, it is acidic. Number two, within the parietal cell, you have the receptor you want. Yes? Within the parietal cell, you have the receptor you want in close proximity, because the receptor you want, the hydrogen ATPase pump within the parietal cell. So once it goes in the blood, it is passing through the blood as a lipophilic molecule. It penetrates the membranes very readily. It gets into the parietal cell, protonated. It is trapped. Protonated at the benzimidazole ring, protonated at the pyridine ring, pop, it is trapped. Then it undergoes equilibrium now within the parietal cell to generate for you the moiety that requires to bind the receptor. Where is the receptor? Within the parietal cell. So the receptor is very close to where the activation is being done. So you do not have any drug loss, and therefore maximum or optimal reactivity. And that's why I'm saying, when you look at a question, please answer it appropriately. Explain a bit where you need to. So it is not because of degradation that we are doing enteric coated. It's not because we want issues of reabsorption, but the main issue is that we want to prevent the activation of this drug until it gets very close. It is very, very close to the site of action to optimize its reactivity. Because when the receptor is near, activation is near, then for sure you will get maximum activity. So make sure that when you answer your questions, assume Daktari knows nothing. That's what I always tell you. Assume you are explaining to somebody who does not understand anything for you to acquire maximum point. So we are saying they are enteric coated, and protected by enteric coating, the drug will not be released from front formulation until it reaches the intestines. I hope I did not leave this slide open. The higher pH of the intestinal fluid blood ensures that the pyridine and benzimidazole nitrogens of the PPI remain unionized, while the inhibitor molecule makes its way back to the stomach. Once it diffuses back from the general circulation across the gastric membranes, it encounters the acid-filled canalicular network, protonates, rearranges, and binds the cysteine residues of the proton pump. I hope I had not left that open. I don't know. Anyway, So that is what is important for us to know. The formulation of these drugs, they must be formulated in a way that they will not be released in the stomach, because the stomach already is acidic. But they will be released in the duodenum, and in the duodenum, it's made basically basic. The blood is also pH 7.4. So these nitrogens are not that highly basic, so they're not protonated in the blood. They have high lipid solubility, penetrate the parietal cell membrane well, get into the cell, trapped there, activated there, their activity is there, and therefore they are able to give us very good, or they are able to be highly effective, because of the fact that they are also acting very, very near the site. They are activated very near the site of action. Hello, daktari. Yes. So you are looking at the formulation, and